Recently, at San Diego State University, a 19-year-old female student died of an apparent cocaine overdose. As a result of this death, the DEA, working with campus police, ran a massive undercover operation that has resulted in the arrest of almost 100 students.
Graduation photos are being replaced with mugshots today after a huge drug bust on the campus of San Diego State University. Joining us, local college students who once had bright futures are getting a real life lesson tonight in our criminal justice system.
After being caught in a 5-month-long investigation consisting of more than 130 undercover drug buys. It was launched by campus police after 19-year-old Alpha Phi sorority member Shirley Jenny Poliakoff was found dead of a cocaine overdose.
Obviously, the death of this girl is tragic, and locking up the man or men responsible is necessary. But had this young woman died from alcohol, as thousands do every year, would there have been such a mad dash to arrest anyone, simply because they sold an undercover cop a beer or a pint of whiskey? Or did they use classic drug war tactics in order to elevate the drug threat to a ridiculous conclusion, causing almost 100 students to have their lives torn apart and not graduate?
Besides all those arrests you've been talking about, investigators also collected 50 pounds of marijuana, 4 pounds of cocaine, and 350 ecstasy pills.
Why does our government allow certain drugs such as alcohol and tobacco to kill almost 1 million Americans per year, and yet they are willing to arrest people for growing a pot plant or selling an undercover agent a few joints? Presiding very close to San Diego, Superior Court Judge James Gray is forced to deal with hundreds of marijuana arrests per week.
I am convinced that if we were to regulate marijuana like alcohol, soon we would probably have less marijuana usage than we have today. And that usage would be far more responsible, and people would, in effect, those that were using it would probably come down the drug ladder in order to use it, because a lot of people that are using harder drugs have marijuana as their drug of choice.
Back when I was in school, the guy you bought your pot from was usually a tie-dye, overall-wearing farm boy with a sticky green thumb. But as Nixon's drug war progresses towards its 5th decade, many college pot dealers not only sell much harder drugs, but now they have to be well armed.
Just 24 hours after undercover officers seized more than $100,000 worth of drugs, weapons, and cash in Operation Sudden Fall, the largest bust in campus history.
English professor Peter Herman says it's not the drugs that surprise him, but the weapons.
I am absolutely shocked. I'm less shocked about the drugs part, but I'm absolutely shocked about the firearms. That is really, really scary.
Former Republican governor of New Mexico, Gary Johnson, has dedicated much of his life to the drug war problem.
Was that only about 10,000 people die every year from their use of cocaine and heroin. Well, of course, there will be those that will say, well, gee, that's because these are illegal drugs. And if you legalize these drugs, or if you adopt harm reduction strategies regarding these drugs, you know, the death rate's going to go way up. Well, no. In fact, you could argue that the death rate is going to go way down, because there will be those that will always die from overdose of drugs. But overdose today is a function of prohibition. You don't know quality, quantity.
I obviously didn't know the young girl whose life was tragically taken away. But had it not been for Nixon's 37-year-old drug war, perhaps she would have only been drinking beer and smoking pot. It's frightening to think of what the future holds if this insane drug prohibition is allowed to continue.
Pop a firecracker, crackers!
The problem is, if you look at drug prohibition, we are, by our laws, encouraging people to use stronger drugs. For example, let me give you a story. We have 2 men who are going to use one's going to use marijuana, the other is going to use cocaine. And they're going to go into adjoining toilet stalls in a men's room. Ask yourself the question, who is more likely to be caught? Well, first of all, if the people are carrying about 10 or 15 dosage units, the person carrying the marijuana is more likely to be caught just because of the bulk and the smell. Message: if you're concerned about being caught, use cocaine, don't use marijuana. Further, of course, we all know that the cocaine has no fragrance to it particularly. Marijuana is going to be very readily recognized. Message: worried about being caught, take cocaine, don't take marijuana.
With almost 100 students being punished for this accidental overdose of one girl, it's almost impossible to believe that every year pharmaceutical drugs account for over 10 times more deaths than all illegal drugs combined.
It's estimated that 100,000 people died last year from their use of legal prescription drugs.
In a recent 60 Minutes story, it was discovered that Bayer Pharmaceutical, in alliance with the FDA, has been knowingly profiting from a drug that has been killing an average of 1,000 people per month.
It's estimated Trasolol was contributing to the loss of 1,000 lives a month.
If we arrested 75 people from every death caused by this one Bayer drug alone, that would be over 1 million people in prison. But why will that never happen?
You're looking at pharmaceuticals. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But if you look at all the pain medications, all of the drugs that we use, probably 80% of them could be eliminated by people using cannabis.
People who care realize that the amphetamines, the cocaines will stay detectable in your blood system for about 72 hours. The marijuana will stay detectable for about 30 days. So if you're concerned about getting caught, take the stronger stuff, don't take the marijuana. This is stupid. But that is what our laws of drug prohibition are doing. And if we were to regulate and control marijuana, for example, people would come down the ladder and take the drug that they really basically wanted to take anyway, because most people realize that the stronger drugs are bigger problems. But the laws are pushing them in the other direction.
If this is not bad enough, former DEA agent Celerino Castillo remembers how he witnessed firsthand our own government shipping in the illegal drugs.
I remember down in Central America, we were refueling planes full of cocaine coming into the U.S., and it was a CIA operation being run by the White House.
We understand what you're saying. A ton of cocaine was smuggled into the United States of America.
Well,
in cooperation with the CIA?
That's exactly what appears to have happened.
Selling the American public on the two most perfect boogeymen, drugs and terror, seems to have worked, allowing our own elected officials to carve away at our personal freedom that my father, your father, and our founding fathers fought and died for.
If you quit drugs, you join the fight against terror in America.
We got more drugs today than we did 10 years ago, and that's got to tell you that there is something bigger that's not being shown.
In 1972, when Richard Nixon started the war on drugs, the federal budget allocation was $101 million. Going into fiscal year 2000, the federal budget allocation was $20 billion. Yet there were more drugs in the country in 2000. They were of better quality and they were less expensive than they were in 1972. What's wrong with that picture?
Back on the University of San Diego campus, the frat boy drug ring is now gone. But I wonder if students will suddenly stop doing drugs, or if the frat boy drug dealers will simply be replaced by a far more organized, ruthless organization because of all the potential profit that exists in selling students illegal drugs.
So the secret through all of this, I've been doing this for a lot of years, the secret boils down to one thing. Prohibition never works as well as regulation and control. Let me say that again. Prohibition never works as well as regulation and control. That doesn't mean that we abandon our children to cocaine use or marijuana use or anything else, but as soon as you prohibit something, you give up all control. And now the only people in control are the illegal drug sellers, and they do want your 14-year-old daughter to get hooked on cocaine.
So don't wait until you or someone you love becomes another statistic in this war for profit. Get involved today.
Today the price of cocaine and heroin is drastically reduced from when the drug war began, whereas the prices of cannabis are many fold higher. So regardless of any arguments that anybody might make regarding whether this is good or bad, if you just look at that simple fact that today it's much cheaper to buy heroin and cocaine than it used to be, and it's much more expensive to buy marijuana than it used to be, that should suggest to anybody with half a brain that we're pursuing a failed policy, that we're making the wrong drugs more readily available, and we're making this good drug that has all of this therapeutic potential less readily available.
Go to AmericanDrugWar.com and join the American Drug War Coalition. And together we will send a message to our congressmen, senators, and state representatives that we want our country back.